Thanks for coming out this morning. I'm Peter Phillip. This is Derek Hales from Bad Shepherd. We're going to talk about using the seal or using independence as a marketing weapon in your arsenal to help build market share and sell more beer. That's ultimately why we're all here, right? So I'm pretty sure everybody here using the seal? Yeah? No? Anybody not using the seal? Yep. So that's great. So what we're doing with the seal is trying to create a brand for independence, right? So this should be the thing that consumers identify with and you start using as a buying criteria when they go out and they shop for beer, right? So currently, we know that certain consumers think that independence is important, but we did a marketing survey, or we did a survey of consumers, and they identified all the right things. That independence means that it's a small business, it's not owned by a major, and so on. But we've got to move the dial from just people who are interested in beer or interested in craft and independence to the general consumer. So we have an objective of getting to 15% market share. My own personal objective is beyond that, right? We've got to grow the market and we have to have a bigger ambition beyond 15%. So this is a market adoption curve, right? It applies to any industry and it breaks up consumers into these 5 groups. And there's always consumers at the bleeding edge who are the absolute enthusiasts. They're called the innovators. And we all know those customers, right? Those are the people that are beer aficionados. They only drink craft. They've got craft beer running through their veins, right? They are the typical beer nerds, of which I am one, right? And it's like those are our traditional customers, and they will always be our customers. But they are a small part of the market, right? They're vocal, but we need to move beyond that. So we're in the early adopter section. So those two things together are generally around 15% of our market, right? So to get to our market share, assuming that these people also drink non-independent craft, right? We've got to go to the third category, which is the early majority. Now, there's a chasm here. The chasm represents the fact that the innovators and the early majority, the early adopters, they will seek out beer. These are the people that have apps and they track beer and they look for beer and they research it and they're interested and all of that. The early majority run on a whole different value proposition in their minds, or the value proposition is formed differently in their minds. So that's what Derek's going to talk about, is how we jump the chasm and get into the early majority. But we need to get to out of our traditional customer base, which is the beer aficionados. So I'm going to talk mostly about how to use the seal. And Derek's going to talk about how to tell your story effectively. If you are using the seal, you signed a seal contract, right? That contract puts an obligation on you to use the seal in conjunction with the guidelines. If you do not use it in conjunction with the guidelines, then the contract that you have to use the seal can be revoked. Right? So that's our stick, so that we ensure that everybody uses the seal in a consistent way that is boosting the reputation and the brand of independent beer. So as you probably all know, there are 2 versions of the seal. We call that the brewery seal, the top one, and the other one is called the supporter seal. So the brewery seal is only used to promote IBA member beers. or IBA members, or independent beer in general. Okay? Notice I didn't say who can use it, right? So the so the brewery seal can be used by other parties, not just breweries, right? And I'll get into that in a second. So the supporter seal is only to be used by associate members who are promoting their business, right? So you have this general rule of in your mind, just what is the seal? What am I trying to promote? If I'm trying to promote independences in general, or a member beer or brewery, then I use the brewery seal. If I'm a pub or a bottle shop or retailer, and I'm promoting my business as being an associate member, or let's say I'm an accountancy firm that specializes in craft breweries, right? They can use that if they're an associate member as well. They're promoting their business, so they would use the supporter seal. So when to use each one? Well, first of all, use the correct version, right? So there's a color and a monochrome version of the seal, and then there's a version for light backgrounds and dark backgrounds. So here's a good example of a retailer's site.
Enough stars, Pete? I don't know.
Well, I know. So a retailer site that is actually using the wrong version. Okay? I won't say which site this is. You might recognize it. But you see, that is the version that's used for dark backgrounds, and it's on a light background. So you notice that we've lost the lockup around independent, and so we're talking to them about fixing that. But that's a real-world example of something that's out there where people are trying to do the right thing. This is amazing, having the seal available when you search for a beer that's independent and it comes up. That's amazing. So we achieved part of the aim, but we just need to get them to change that. So when do you use the supporter seal, right? So here we've got a pot of beer, right? Now, if that pot was containing independent beer, you can use the brewery seal, right? Now, here's an example of, it's an associate member, it's a pub, right? And so the pub can use the brewery seal if they're promoting independent beer. That's fine. But if they put their logo on it or their name on it, it's now promoting their business. So they say, I'm promoting my business. Who am I? I'm a supporter. I'm an associate member. I use the supporter seal to promote my business, right? But we have all this collateral available for pubs, so they can just they can just order these, so here's something where this would be in a pub, but they're using the brewery seal, right? Because it's saying look for the seal. They're promoting independent beer in general, right? If they were promoting Bad Shepherd, they could use the brewery seal. As soon as they have their logo on it, right, closely associated with the seal, it's now using the supporter seal. So it's sort of like, who am I promoting this? I am a supporter, or I am a brewery. So here, this would be a catalog, printed catalog or something like that. So it's saying, check out these great indie beers. It's promoting independent beer in general, right? And all of these beers would have to be independent. As soon as they had one beer here that wasn't independent, then they couldn't have the banner saying, check out all these indie beers, because then consumer could go, oh, James Squire, is that independent, right? That's what we have to really be very strict about with retailers, is that they're not potentially confusing consumers, or somebody is getting this halo of independence, right, just by virtue of this. And the shop is called Brands on Smith, right? And they're saying proudly supporting independent beer, so they use the supporter seal at the bottom. So that's an example of using both of them. Signage. So this one's a little ambiguous, right? Because because they could use either one, right? If they have this sign here, are they promoting their business, the pub, or are they promoting independent beer in general? Depends on how you look at it. If they had their logo or their name on that sign, then the supporter seal would definitely be appropriate. But in this case, they could use either one, right? And what I was saying is that we would prefer to see the brewery seal is the main seal. So we don't want to see, like, we want to see that used in 85 or 90% of examples. So if in doubt, we would prefer people to use the brewery seal. So rollout plan. So essentially, we, I like the saying, rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if we grow the market, we all do better, right? Promoting independent beer or getting people to identify in their mind that looking at the back of the can for this independent seal is an important thing when you're buying, right? So, we need to convince more consumers, just like I do when I go to the grocery store and I'm looking at garlic. If it's not made in Australia, I don't buy it, right? So that's what we need to get people doing, is saying, if it doesn't have that seal, I'm just not buying it, right? Then every consumer that has that in their head now is growing our market share, and we'll talk about the getting into the early majority, but that's what we need to convince, because the innovators already do that. They already know who's independent and who's not independent. They just know it in their bones. So we are working on a plan to fund a major consumer marketing campaign. I think that we should be spending $1 million a year on that. Right? Kylie will tell you that our finances do not stretch to $1 million a year. Our finances don't stretch to $1,000 a year. Well, maybe a little bit more than that. But we are looking at how we fund that. So we're going to our partners to see if we can build value propositions for them that mean that they'll support us more with more funds. Let's face it, we just all got an extra $250,000 of excise relief, or up to, right? We've now absolutely proven the value of being a member of the IBA, right? Everybody's now got this extra funding. So guess what? Everybody needs to dig deeper in terms of helping to fund the IBA. So that's a little preview that your fees are probably going to be going up, right? But when somebody
$249,000,
yeah,
$999.
Subtract the new fee from $250,000, and as long as it's positive, then it's a good deal for everybody. But if you think about it, if we all, if our fees went up from 10 grand to 20 grand, an extra 10 grand, right, is something that I wouldn't move the dial with Wayward funding 10 grand. That just doesn't even touch the sides, right? But if we all did that and we get to $1 million marketing budget, just think, the rising tide is going to lift all boats, and we will all make more money. Cool. That's what I wanted to talk about. So Derek's going to go on the...
Sure. Right. So I think I'm going to talk to you guys just a little bit more probably about I guess campaign and how we communicate to that target consumer. My background, I spent 15 years in marketing at Kraft Foods and Mondelez, and had drilled into me a lot of basic marketing principles that apply. Doesn't matter what you do, they apply. And I just want to talk a little bit about what we as an IBA and ultimately you as brewery owners, we all really need to be thinking about in order to shift the paradigm and to change our narrative. So everything we do right now, I'm going to show you something right now that I think you'll all agree, but everything we do right now is heavily focused on that early adopter, the people that buy in. They're screaming pride of supporting that independent brewery with the next great thing, and that's good. That's really good. But in order to shift to the early majority, we need to start to understand what matters to them and start to speak to them. So one thing that, if you shift it, maybe the next page. I don't think I did a slow release. No, I didn't, so that's all right. One thing that, like I said, was drilled into me in my marketing days was the right to win. What is our right to win as independent breweries? And that right to win has to connect back to an insight to whoever your target consumer is. And a term we always used was the strategically valuable consumer and what matters to them. And what is our right to win? How can we have a uniquely ownable point of difference versus our competitor being big beer? So if we start by looking at the innovators and early adopters, the people that are buying in today, for the vast majority, we unfortunately, being a small association that's rapidly growing, but we unfortunately don't have any or a lot of quantitative data. But qualitatively, I'm sure you guys can all agree that our primary place that we have a uniquely ownable point of difference versus big beer is on product differentiation. We all know we do it. We just came up yesterday with making a mango lassi cream sour with some kind of weird thing. It's great. It's wonderful. And those people, those early adopters, are going to buy in, and they're going to buy the beer. But that is not the uniquely ownable point of difference that matters to the early majority, not to the people that are buying beer that's just within arm's reach, wherever they are, at a festival, at Beer Deluxe, at the Grosvenor Hotel, wherever the hell they are. It matters a lot less, right? So, and we know that, and we all make our core beer too, and we try to get our taps there and stuff. But the reality is, where we're winning is on this side. Product diversity, product innovation, exclusivity. We all launch those limiteds and they sell out, and it's great. It's wonderful. Same people are buying them, right? So, and then we as an IBA have been celebrating that and trying to create a niche in that industry. But if we get into the insights of the early majority, the people that independence matters, craft beer matters, it's part of their repertoire. They may buy it, they might not. What really matters to them is more about a genuine connection. So this is where we need to shift our narrative in what we're doing to think about the uniquely ownable point of difference that we have versus big beer for those people that care a lot less about the mango lassi cream sour. They care more just about what they're doing. So where we need to win there, that uniquely ownable point of difference, is in storytelling. So how are we authentic? How are we approachable? How are we local? What's the experience? How are you experiencing us? In a festival, in a bar? How are you being engaged with that? And being a part of the local community. One thing you'll notice I didn't put up there is quality. Why? Anybody know? It's kind of obvious. Uniquely ownable point of difference. Do we have one against big beer on quality? No, we don't, right? We know they can make good beer. Everybody knows that Carlton Draft is a consistently good beer. But it's not, okay, consistent. And consistent on quality. So, but that's your interpretation. You're over here, right? So the people over there, to them it is quality, and that's okay, right? We can't tell them it's not. It is consistent, and we can do that. Then their quality is high. You know, we can't beat that. You know, we can match it if we really strive to best we can, but we can never beat it. And where we can win is on storytelling. They can't tell the story we do. They can't be as authentic as we are. They can't be integrated into the community and be the face of it. We could both be within arm's reach, but we can be there personally, right? So that's where we need to shift our paradigm from product differentiation to storytelling. Part of that is you, part of that is the IBA, and part of it is all of us together. So that's that rising tide lifts all boats. So if you flip the page, Pete, how do you tell that story? How do we move into storytelling? And this to me is really where the money is for all of us, is moving to that early majority. We have to shift off of those, moon rock, lava, mushroom IPAs, whatever. It's great, but it's not where we really matter. So first place is educate your customer, and that's on a B2B basis. I don't mean the consumer, I mean the customer. Get out there and explain what indie beer is and why it matters. Part of it is still product, yes. But the bigger thing is storytelling. Tell your story. Give them the facts. There's real facts now, right? So you guys should have all seen, if you haven't, reach out to the IBA and get it. But you should have seen the what was the body of work we did that to get explain the size of indie beer now? The economic impact study. So that's available to you now. It's a third-party assessment of how big we are, right? So in the 7,000 jobs, and is it $1.8 billion of contribution? 1.93 billion of contribution. They're real numbers, and a lot of publicans and retailers don't know these things, right? So talk to how big they are. Then tell them your story. Share as much facts as you want. I'd recommend to share a lot of them. We're all growing. Tell the truth. You know, you're exploding in growth. You can't keep in stock. If they hear that, they have a much higher interest. Don't be afraid to flaunt it. But then tell the story how you're going to support them. Don't worry too much about the product. Worry about the story. Who are you? Why are you going to support them? Why does it matter? Why should independence matter to that early majority where they're really going to get their sales, that publican or retailer is going to get that sale? And then educate them on the product. Take some time and tell them about it. But keep in mind that what matters is a uniquely ownable point of difference is the story. We'll win every time on that. Displaying the seal is obviously another thing that Pete talked about. I think we are all pretty much doing it on pack now. I think we have a number of, is it something like over 70% of volume now is displaying the seal, and it's going up every day. Obviously display it. I think I'm preaching to the converted in here. I'm sure you guys are all doing it. If you're not, do it. But display it, and don't just put it on pack. Put it proudly on your window. Put it on your car. Put it wherever you can, and overinvest in point of sale that tells that story that you are independent, and then connect with the community on it. So, but everywhere you can, all your comms, keep on displaying it, and that's how we'll get together the story out there. Leveraging the IBA campaign. So we have done a few things, and as Pete mentioned, there's a lot more to come in terms of marketing support. During COVID, we did have to take a step back. The team all had to reduce their hours, and we had to make some changes to our structure. And we all know we had to do those things, but that's changing. And in the next year, you'll see a lot more runs on the board again. But just already, things like taking advantage of these things when they come out. That's how you tell your story, right? Put great beer in there and tell a story within it. Put a leaflet. Tell who you are. What's that? Well, we still have lots left. Get them. We use them, and with the ones I think we got about a couple hundred, and they sold out really quickly. I'll have to get more. But and it's not just that. It's leverage whatever opportunities we provide you. Use it and tell that story. So, Indie Beer Day, Good Beer Week, point of sale as it come out, posters, collateral. There's always things. I think we probably need to do a little bit of a better job of explaining what's left. We probably do it by email. Apologize if we do, but we'll keep doing it. But if you're unsure, reach out. There's always collateral you can take advantage of. So it doesn't always have to tap into your own pocket. Part of your membership subscriptions pay for that. So, and then the last piece is storytelling. So, and storytelling, it comes back again to thinking about the strategically valuable consumer. It's not that early adopter, it's the early majority. So tell your story. Don't tell them about the product. The early adopters already bought in. We still have to do it. Like, I'm not saying we need to go out there and stop making great, quadruple hazy IPAs with the latest hop. Like, we still have to do that. But focus your efforts on your strategically valuable consumer, which is the early majority. That's how we all win. That's especially how you win. Seth Godin, anybody know Seth Godin? He's like a marketing guru. Anyway, bald guy that's got that book, Meatball Sunday. Anyway, he always talks about penetration as a strategy, right? So there's two ways to grow in terms of your volume or revenue. It's either your average weight of purchase or penetration. There's only two ways to get more volume. Average weight of purchase means the people that are buying and have a repertoire of craft beer today, getting more of them. The penetration is new consumers in. It's pretty obvious which one wins, right? So the more you bring in to the fold, the more we win. Early adopters are already bought in. So let's think about the storytelling. The product doesn't matter to the early majority. Storytelling does. So keep on telling your story. Keep on explaining why you're authentic. Be there. Be at the coalface of it. Be within arm's reach everywhere you can. So I think if we focus on storytelling to that early majority, and we provide the weapons to do that from an IBA point of view, and we all focus on that together, the early majority will start to step in. And that's a natural thing, to step over that chasm into the new place. But in order to move from, and there's a little kind of chasm thing that you saw on Pete's slide. there's a lot of science in that, in marketing, over what happens with products as they start to launch, and then they effectively stop, plateau, or fail. And then you move on to the next limited edition beer, or not beer, but limited edition or new product development idea. The reason you fall over is because you don't find a uniquely ownable point of difference with that early majority. We have one. We just have to tap into it, right? So, but if we keep on focusing in the same place, we won't get there. So we all need to focus on storytelling, not on product. That make sense?
Yeah, this consumer, called the pragmatist, as Derek said, they don't necessarily care about your product innovation, right? So this consumer might be going out and buying a $100 case of Asahi made in Japan, right? Are they buying that because they think that's the best beer in the market? No. They're probably buying that because they want to signal to their friends that they can afford an expensive beer. Japanese beer has a halo of quality, right? They don't really know how it's made, but they just think that, right? So to them, what's more important is the fact that they are seen to be drinking a premium product, right? Now, in their mind, in some of their minds, they might think, oh, that craft stuff is just all weird. It's just all weird beer, and I don't like the flavor. Have you ever heard somebody say your beer has too much flavor, right?
Smells like daisies, mate.
Yeah, it's like, why does it smell like? Yeah, why does it smell like flowers or fruit or whatever? I just want my beer to be a beer, right? So these consumers don't necessarily care. So what we've got to convince them is that actually there's an independent beer for everyone, right? And they will be attracted to probably your simplest beer, right? Your Pilsner, a really lightly hopped pale ale, right? That is the beer that's going to appeal to these people. And you aren't going to be able to say, oh, it's a better Pilsner than Carlton Draft or Asahi or whatever, because those are excellent products. They're very well-made products for what they are. They're just not very adventurous. We don't drink them because we want adventurous beer with lots of flavor, right? So we've got to shift. We ourselves are all in that category, right? So you need to take yourself out of that category and project yourself into what these people are thinking. Because guess what? If that's 34% of the marketplace and we start penetrating that and getting more and more and more, like we're going to start to get the more innovative part of that early majority. And to convince them, you're going to have to convince them on a different dimension. These people buy products for a whole raft of reasons. Most of them are psychological, right? They're not product differentiated. They just want a beer that is going to look cool or meets their lifestyle or whatever it is. Whatever their motivation is, we need to find what it is. You need to find what it is and then tell your story, because those people, part of what drives them as a consumer might be made locally. Oh, you know what? I don't go to Coles or Woolies to buy my meat. I go to the local butcher because he's a good dude. I like him. He always recommends some good stuff, right? And I don't care that it costs 25% more. I don't care. Right? I've got the money. It's fine, right? I mean, not to say that these people are all, rich people, right? It's that to them the value proposition is local, or, I like Derek. I went and met Derek one day. He did a brewery tour for me, and now I'm only ever going to buy Bad Shepherd because I get that, right? And then as those people, they may, typically also these people may be sole brand loyal, right? So that's actually a pretty good thing for us, right? You get that customer, you're going to get them for a long time. But, they can also tip into this category. They can go down the curve. We've all seen that, people who hated IPA that when they first tried it, and then 2 years later they're drinking quad IPAs, right? Anyways, so that's what we had to cover off. Interested to hear your guys' stories and how you think you can tell that story. What's your name? What's your story?
We opened a brewery in Queensland this year, so it's called BOB. We're trying to be the first brewery to get a chef hat. Yeah, that's cool. Something different. Our customer base is actually conservative and pragmatic. That's our full customer base. We don't have missionaries or innovators at all. So it's totally different market that we are hitting. A lot of our customers drink like Dom Perignon, and they come in and drink fine champagne, but we get them to start with beer. Oh, sorry. So it's interesting to hear. Oh, sorry.
We're recording. So.
Oh, nice.
But that's a great story. I mean, the idea of like having food at the center of your
food is
offering.
breaking the chasm, as you say. So the food brings the people in. So yeah, it's. We didn't expect it to do that, but it did. So yeah.
And you guys have an interesting story.
Yeah, we do. Well, I think our market is already at that early majority kind of clientele. We're in a smaller town south of Melbourne, and yeah, the people that are coming through are looking for safe beers, coming for events and things.
What's
like
your most
that.
popular beer?
Well, as everyone is, it's the lager. We probably brew how many liters? 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. So we're already at that stage, and we're trying to grab the innovators at the moment. So it's kind of the other way around, which is interesting.
I mean, that's a good indicator. I mean, in the inner west of Sydney, right? Like our most popular beer is a raspberry Berliner Weiss, right? And if you told me, 8 years ago or 10 years ago when we first started brewing that beer, that raspberry Berliner Weiss would be our biggest seller, I would have said you're bloody crazy, right? So, like that just is a good indicator of what your market is, right? And just play to your market. You can start playing around the edges, right? By doing that product innovation, right? And just test it, right? And that's a good indicator of where your market is. But are you, in a brew pub, obviously people come in and they experience your brand, tactile, right? That is absolutely telling the story. But, you can have table talkers that talk about you guys, right? What your background is, right? That's play up to that so that people, when they walk in, they go, oh, I know the owners, right? I know their story, right? That is the best thing you can do is by telling your customers your story, your personal story, like how you got into brewing. Was it home brewing? Was it, I tell people, I started brewing because when I lived in the UK and I moved to Australia, I couldn't get warm flat beer, right? I love English ales, and so I had to start making them myself because I couldn't buy them. And, that started a love affair with making beer. And, people love that story.
One thing that's worked for us at the tap house is, we mentioned the lager pays all our bills, more than any other beer by far. But we also made one called the Australian Bitter. So people come in, they want that, I want a beer that tastes like a beer. But with our regulars, once we create that relationship at the tap house, it's like, before you order that, try this. Within 6 to 8 months, we had people that were starting to buy the pale ales, the IPAs. So we do take them on that, and I hate saying this term, but the journey of craft beer. And they're willing to risk something new and try a different brand. So that's what's really cool about telling the story, but also knowing your clientele and what they're after and taking that risk with them as well. So that works for us.
I think it absolutely makes sense, Rami. It still comes always back to, in the end, it's not that product doesn't matter, but it doesn't. What matters is understanding what your uniquely ownable point of difference is for your strategically valuable consumer. So how are you telling your story? If it's already with the early majority, that's great. But be clear on the story you're telling for that strategically valuable consumer. and hit them again and again and again with the message that you uniquely own, or we uniquely own, right? So Big Beer can't sit here and do this. This is what we need to do, is continue to give that message. Most people are fighting to get from here to over here, but if you're already over here, be clear on who that strategic valuable consumer is for you and hit them with that message. You might find it's more about product, and that's okay, but then define your strategically valuable consumer and give them that message, right? So it always has to come back to why you have a right to win. So tell that story, whatever the story is. Most of us are going the other way, though. So, but yeah, it's good.
Yes, thanks. Daniel here from Scholars Inc. Now, the Cytologist, we just rebranded. I just had a bit of a question. Well, before I do the question, we are gypsy brewers. So I guess that has slightly some differences in how you do your storytelling, and naturally you don't have that local aspect that you can get the early majority. So that touches a bit on my question. But yeah, the good thing about our storytelling is that we are 3 PhD engineers and scientists that started this. So we came from the science part of it to analyze beer, and then we started to make it. So I think that's sort of works nicely for the...
That's a really cool story. There's your story. Right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
No.
That's, at least that's what we got going us, because we naturally don't have the local part of it. So...
Well, you do. Local is a relative thing, right? So local is however you define it. You might not have a coal face or a tap house or a tap room or a brew pub, but if you have a place where you can engage and connect with a consumer base telling your story, that's local. You know, so that could be local online. It could still be local. It's relative to the paradigm you've created. So, but it's still coming back to the ownable point of difference. You've got one there, and you've got an incredible. That's an incredible story. Like, you just sold me. I'd love to try your beers because you've thought it through, right? You've thought it through better than I could. I'm trained through IBD and marketing. Like, I'm not. And we do our best, and we got a DO meter, and we try to make sure it's not oxidized, right? Like, and we throw crazy stuff in there. Like, that's great what you're doing, you know? So tell that story. And that's more than just creating a new product and speaking to a hipster with the product, right? Sorry to say.
And you can also lean into the fact that you're a gypsy brewer, right? I mean, call yourself, that's a romantic kind of term, gypsy brewer. You can say that you're partnering with, you know, one of the best breweries in the country, and, you know, they make your beer, and you collaborate with them to lean into it. Don't shy away from it. Say, yeah, you know, we're 3 people that, you know, someday we want to own our own brewery, but for now we're just working with the best in the industry, and we're the tinkerers and, you know, the mad scientists.
Yeah.
That was an incredible story.
Thanks.
I was just like, wow, that's cool.
Thanks for that. Very quick follow-up question, just in terms of like volumes. You naturally say you want to have those more approaching kind of beers for your not very adventurous drinkers. Naturally, it's a bit difficult with volume. We have only released 2 beers. Actually, one of them is a mango lassi sour. So that's maybe you'll like that one. But yeah, we because we're so low volume, we try to make the only beer that we do make. We want to make it adventurous. We want to make it, cutting edge, using something that people are not using, just sort of like leveraging our scientific side. How would you, from a marketing perspective more so, how would you make that shift to more approachable beer?
So you need to understand that, you know, your adventurous beers are great. That's fine. That's creating a reputation. And, you know, if you are developing this reputation as the mad scientists, right, then that leans into this category, right? So, but what you need to understand is that your customers that are buying your beer there are not going to be the ones. They are not going to buy your beer, the one that you just bring out a Carlton Draft lookalike, right? So you have to then attack. It's like breaking into a whole different market. Now, you might just say, you know what? We want to lean into the mad scientist thing, and that's our market, and that's it. That's valid. It's a valid business plan, right? But it's a crowded business. You're competing for 2.5% of the market, right? So you're probably never going to have the massive volume. But every business is, I shouldn't say just a brew pub. If you're a brew pub, right, you may say, look, we're going to make 200,000 liters of beer a year, or 100,000 liters of beer, or 50,000 liters of beer, right? You just have to decide what your breakup is, and really your customers tell you what that is. But you are going out, and if you're just packaging, then you've got to break through a very, very crowded market. Look at that tap list over there. There's an amazing array of adventurous beers on that. So that's a tougher thing.
But it's okay. Pete's right. Like, the reality is, if your business model and what you believe is viable and your personal purpose is to deliver differentiation to these people and to challenge the norm, that's okay. We're talking about the entire category and what we need to do to make us as a growing community more relevant to more people, because we know we can be. We need to start telling stories that aren't beyond the product, which is why product doesn't necessarily matter. It can. And in your case, geez, if I were you, I would probably be focusing here. Probably. I'm not close enough to it, but what I just heard, yeah, that's, not everybody has to chase the penetration side of strategy. You can chase average weight of purchase, and that's okay. You're competing in a smaller space, but if you have a relevant, uniquely ownable point of difference in there, that's okay. Like, that's, we as an industry need to put our head here, but not everybody does. Like, there's a lot of breweries that are firmly in that area and continue to challenge what the norm of beer is. And that's good. It's not bad shepherd. We take our cues from you. So, and then we go and make our own mango lassi cream sour, right? So, and it's there's a role for everybody in that environment. So I wouldn't die too much on the sword of needing to get over here if it's not for you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Anybody else have a story they want to talk about and explore?
During COVID last year, of course, I know it worked for us using the independent story as well and using the branding. Did you notice, with whatever data you guys were able to gather, that there was an increase for demand for independence and supporting local as a whole for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had people, we had a pop-up stand in our driveway with a little fridge there. We'd roll up the door and people would come in, and people who would normally buy a 6-pack or 2 6-packs were buying cases. Some people were buying multiple cases, and they were just like, you know what? It's like I'm forcing my friends to drink, not forcing them, but I'm taking this beer out to my friends because I want to support you guys. I want them to love this beer as much as I love it, and they became massive advocates. Saying to people who would not normally have a raspberry Berliner Weiss, you've got to try this. This is amazing. It's from these guys. It's from Pete around the corner. And I worked that stand, right? Some days, and people will be like, oh my God, it's so great to see you here. I'm so happy. So that and the great thing about COVID was that a lot of that stuck, right? So those people's behavior continued post-COVID. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, our friends at Dan's and BWS, immediately shifted their payment terms down, shortened the payment terms, increased the local ranging, right? And that just reinforced it. So that was great to see. Any other questions? Question here? Sorry.
Thanks, Derek and Pete. Zoe from Brick Lane. I've got more of a question. Independent beer absolutely, kicks butt over mainstream because of genuine stories, real people behind it. One of the areas I think we also need to consider as an opportunity is accessibility. Like, we're all telling our independent stories, but we're doing it one person, 2 people at a time, when we're up against mainstream beer doing it with much bigger budgets, much bigger reaches, much bigger opportunities to drive trial than we get. When the mainstream market is shopping in mainstream options, how are we getting our business partners, and I'm probably talking mainly big box retailers here, to champion independent beer more? Like, they have their craft beer section, but those shelves don't expand. They just swap us in and out. How can we get them to champion that, paying that $5, $10 a case more for a measurable product, like a draft to a draft, or an accessible style to an accessible style, is worth it, so we can grow those craft shelves and get the volume up as well?
So that's why we need $1 million a year, right? Because basically, if we're telling the story of independent beer out to the more mainstream consumer, then they are going to go into Dan's BWS and the Coles outlets and demand more beer, right? And they are expanding. They are expanding their shelf space. So I didn't put it on here, but in the usage guidelines, there is great examples of shelf talkers, fridge stickers, all those sorts of collateral that's available today, right? So it's up to you to go in, talk to those retailers, and they support this, right? To say, yep, let's put the I'm indie, like it just stands out. Let's get, like we have tap talkers that stick on the back of a decal that say, hey, I'm indie beer here, right? Because let's say, you walk into a typical pub that's got 10 taps and they've only got three indie or craft taps, right? And they're going, oh, I'm indie. James Squire. Oh, I thought that was indie. Oh, Panhead. Aren't they indie? Oh, they don't have a sticker. Ooh, wow, that's weird. So immediately, just having something visible like that creates another point of differentiation at the point of sale. And point of sale differentiation is the most important, has the most impact in changing consumer behavior. So having that out there, and look, we're guilty of it too, right? We don't always go to every pub, and I know you have to beat them over the head with it and make sure that they do it, and then they fall off, and then all those sorts of things. But doing it really creates that point of differentiation at the point of sale, which is super, super important. I'm not sure that answered your question.
Well, I think it does, and I think the most important point that Pete made at the start was funds. We do have a responsibility. It's hard for Brick Lane, which is a bigger one, but same thing. To walk in to talk to Michael Kafoa or Billy Ryan and try to say, hey, indie beer, right? It's Brick Lane, and you have a vested interest in Brick Lane, and you need to be, right? So. But we, as an IBA, have a vested interest in all of us. So if we have the funds and the focus, and we have the engagement at the high level with the Billies and Michaels, or Jared's, or whoever it is, to go in and talk to why indie matters, and you come back to that, where's that slide? That it's no different. If you go right to the, keep going, go, my very last one. It's no different. It's the same thing. It's engaging at a high level. So we'll educate them. We'll tell them the story. We'll make sure we're displaying the seal. That's a critical one for point of purchase and making a decision. We'll give them campaigns and work with them, and we'll give them the stories, right? So it's no different. This is still a 360 marketing campaign. This is how you go about doing it. But we have a responsibility for a consolidated view, but we need the funds and the focus to do it. So, but you're right. The truth is, you might get, if you have a 30-minute meeting, you might get 2 minutes to say something about indie, but the truth is you have a vested interest in the performance of Brick Lane, and you need to, right? So, but if we all beat our drum a little bit with the indie anyway, when we're talking to these people, it's going to help too. So.
So I was just saying, we're also working at the level with trade above the range managers to have it, to kind of work with them to meet their own aims and objectives. So we're working at EDG, for example, with the sustainability team, because again, there's a buy local message in the sustainability team. So if the message comes from top down, and we're trying to work with all the majors to develop 12 months agreements as to what we might do together, and that includes displaying more of this, then I think you guys are doing it from ground up, we're doing it from top down, then it all kind of, meets in the middle somewhere. And then when we have all the dollars that these guys have been talking about, marriage made in heaven.
And if we all keep on keeping in mind that the story remains authentic, reality, approachable, genuine, community, all those words, unless you're making awesome beers. That's awesome, new, unique beers. But the truth is most of us are trying to strive towards both. There's a role for both, for sure. But if we're all doing that, and there's an IBA supporting it as well, I think that's how we accomplish it. So.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. Let's go have a great indie beer.
Thanks, guys.